Good morning, happy Tuesday. Welcome back to another episode of AKP Sports Talk. That's Ari in Korea. Look, Ari, obviously, Jets plus 3.5 was not a good look last night, but obviously the under, sweaty play. We're just going to get right into it now. We have a little bit of a quick video, obviously. Not that many plays that I like to get into, obviously, with a limited slate, bunch of college basketball and NBA. We're going to get into that in a little bit later, but we're going to do our full recap of yesterday's games and some of our best bets in terms of the NFL games and for me as well, the college basketball games and as well. And you know what? I'll take a 2-2 day. Obviously, the Jets, that Monday Night Football game, that was bad. I mean, as soon as the punt return went the distance, I knew it was going to be a long day for the Jets. I mean, they just could not find any offensive rhythm. It was the Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack, the Chargers defensive front show, just pretty much just not letting the Jets figure out what kind of offense they want to run. It was a little bit of a struggle for Brees Hall, and just getting to develop a run game as well. It just felt like the Jets offense felt so deflated. They couldn't really get themselves under their own foot, and maybe it was starting with the fact that off of a punt return they're already down 7-0, and now they have to get back out on the field and try again and throw the ball. But obviously with a defensive front in the Chargers that can get to the quarterback, it's a little difficult. So obviously the Jets plus 3.5, tough lean, but at the same time, I feel like that would have been a great cash if that punt return, maybe they didn't return that punt return, maybe that whole game would have, definitely may have changed as well. But I think that just set the tone, and that was just the game end set match pretty much. So Jets plus 3.5 was a tough look. And then Austin Eckler, oh my God, that was a tough beat. Oh my goodness. If you would have told me Eckler would have had like the day he had, just kind of finding pretty much trying to find the end zone multiple times. Obviously there was that, I think they were up 7-0, and there was that one play where it got called back 5 times because of another penalty after penalty. But Austin Eckler comes up a little bit short on his receiving yards. He finished with 23. And he only had 2 receptions, 23 yards. It was just a negative game script. They already were up by so much. They don't really need to throw the ball, just kind of hand it off to him.
But yeah, he had like 7 targets, right? So he had the opportunity. He just couldn't reel them in.
Yeah, it was a weird game. It was just a weird Monday night game. You mentioned he had all the targets. He had like a bunch of targets. Only had 2 receptions. So it was pretty evident that the Jets were kind of just getting into the backfield pretty quickly, kind of forcing those hurried throws from Justin Herbert last night. Just a couple tough beats Monday Night Football. But Jets was 3.5. I thought it was a great look in terms of just how this Jets team played. If you would have told me the under hit, but Jets plus 3.5 didn't, I would have been like, what happened last night? But and then obviously Austin Eckler, same thing. If you told me he had 7 targets and 2 receptions, what happened? So it's tough looks in the NFL last night. But then moving on to college basketball, and all right, this is where I shine, because this is where I love making money. College basketball. First, it was New Mexico, and look, I checked the score at halftime, and I saw they were up by 40, and I was like, okay, yeah, no, this is the beginning part of the season for a lot of these teams, obviously, with their first game. So, with a game like New Mexico against a Texas Southern, they're already up by so much. You don't really need to, check this unless it gets a little close to that line. But USC, that was a good game to watch. Pretty much throughout the game, like I said, we got to see the Isaiah Collier show, and wow, what a start he is. I mean, even though he fouled out early, he still put on a show. It was nice to see guys like DJ Rodman, Boogie Ellis kind of, pick up the groundwork behind to cover the USC -3. They went on to win by like 15, so that was definitely a free line right there. And like I said, I thought this USC team was going to be a lot more talented than they are. Obviously, we all know the situation with Bronny James, him with that medical issue. He's going to be out for a little while, but without him, they looked like a very, really scary team just in terms of how Collier played, and he fouled out early. And this is a Kansas State team that just went all the way to the Elite Eight last year. Obviously, with a little bit of luck on their side and a little bit of momentum, but still they still made it to the Elite Eight, which is a great feat in itself. And playing your first game of the season against a really good UCLA, a really good USC team, it was a tough look. But I think the Trojans are going to be a contender in this Pac-12 conference right now. I mean, they look like a very scary team, but like I said, 2-0 day in college basketball. I definitely cannot complain. And then, a little bit of an 0-2 day in NFL, just some tough beats. But I'll take it a 2-2 day overall. Ari, we'll move on to your best bets from yesterday. How did you do? and let's get into your recap from your day yesterday, from your Monday.
Yeah, I had a 2-1 day on here. Like you said, the under was a little bit sweaty in the Chargers game. There's the 2 touchdowns early with the punt return and then the touchdown on the fumble. So that gave the Chargers 14 points early. And then, the scoring stopped like expected for most of the middle part of the game. And then at the very end, the Jets had the ball, and it would have been a meaningless touchdown for the game, but they had the ball like inside the 10 or maybe even inside the 5, like in that range with like 10 seconds left, and they turned it over on downs for the under to hit. I guess it probably would have pushed if they scored because unless they would have went for 2. I guess it depends on that. But either way, it hit. Thunder win pretty easily. They got Shea back, so by the time it was tip off, they were the favorite. Whereas in the morning, they were a slight underdog. So that's why we talked about yesterday how the lines changed so much from the morning to tip off of the game. So, but yeah, and then I said the Rockets wouldn't shoot that well again, and they did. They shot again 50% from 3. And then the Kings just kind of struggled again shooting the ball. So props to Houston for shooting super well back-to-back games against Sacramento. Kings were definitely missing Fox. Even I still thought that they could pull out even without Fox, but they're definitely in a tough stretch right now. But they face Portland next, I saw, so that's a good bounce-back spot for Sacramento on Wednesday. But yeah, 1-1 in the NBA, 2-1 overall. So of course, we'll take that.
Yeah, as you mentioned, 2-1 day. Obviously that Chargers Jets game you mentioned, as I did mention earlier, got a little sweaty near the end. It was 27-6, and the Jets were kind of making a little bit of a scoreboard comeback drive, and I know you were sweating a little bit because that total was at 33, and it was at 4th and 10, and they find Conklin over the middle, but he ends up just short. So that under does hit for you there, but. Like I said, pretty sweaty line. Like I said, if that under did hit and the Jets would have come, like that's what I'm saying. Like just a weird game. Honestly, just a weird Monday night game. But then obviously you mentioned the Thunder. SGA was pretty much listed as a player, was going to play as probable, and he did play last night. So that line definitely went from 102, obviously, in the favor of the Thunder, right before tip-off. But obviously nice to see that the Thunder did cash for us as well. Obviously it would have been a little disappointing just to do all that reach just to see them lose. But speaking of all that, the Kings, look, I mean, obviously they just didn't show up again. And obviously you mentioned the fact that, De'Aaron Fox is out, and I feel like that's kind of a bigger loss for them right now. And you mentioned this Rockets team. Maybe it's just the fact that they were at home, shooting the ball like that again. But, I don't see the Rockets team shooting like that again, especially with Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks on their team. So, but 2-1 day, like I said, we'll definitely will not complain, but we're trying to get that 3-0 sweep to pretty much, solidify ourselves as one of, just trying to make ourselves up there. But, we'll take that day. We're going to do a little bit of a, we're gonna get into today's best bets, but obviously I want to talk about the ladder challenge just a little bit real quick. Obviously, really tough day yesterday. Andrew Wiggins, thanks for not showing up. 2 of 9. Kelly Oubre, speaking of thanks for not showing up, what you score 147 points and you only score 2 of them? Well, what are you doing? And then obviously the last one was Brandon Ingram. So because of all this, we're going to take a little bit of a hiatus from the ladder challenge. We're going to focus more on college basketball because that's more of a profitable system for me. And now with college basketball, obviously now officially back, for the foreseeable future, we're going to be focusing a lot more on these college basketball plays for the future. But also don't forget, we'll be posting on Twitter soon, pretty much as soon as this recording ends, our Champions League parlay for this morning. Games will kick off at 12 Pacific time. The ones that I will be including, some games will be starting in a few minutes here, but we're not going to be including those. You can find all these plays right below on our Twitter, AKP Sports Talk. We will be posting today's plays and those parlays down as soon as we can, as soon as we maybe wrap up this video here. But now we're going to get into today's plays, and it's going to be a little bit quick 2-piece from me. Obviously, a limited slate in college basketball. I'm first going to go to pretty much the game of the day between Auburn and Baylor. I'm doing a simple play. I'm just taking the over. This is over 147.5 total points. It's at -112 on DraftKings right now. I think that I don't like a side in this because that side has been, I've seen it go Baylor -1.5, and then today it literally opened up at Auburn -1.5. So that line's been swinging, and it's just because you look at the two coaches on the other side. There's Bruce Pearl and there's Scott Drew, two great, very respected coaches in college basketball in terms of what they've done, to lead both of their programs to Final Fours and, for Baylor, a championship team. But, they have a different look this year. And, especially for Baylor, losing Keontae George and LJ Cryers in the portal, it's a new look for Baylor, but I still feel that this Baylor team is definitely going to be, a very, very scary team with Ray J. Davis, I believe. He's going to be one of their leading point getters for this Baylor Bears team. And for Auburn, we always talk about how defensively present they have been. And going back to, how last year, in some of those games, we always talked about how Auburn's defense, really, was the reason why they were winning these games. But, at a low total of 147.5, I kind of like this game to go over, especially, you're kind of letting these young guys, and this is their first game. You got to let them get under their feet a little bit, practice, just getting through the motions of college basketball and all that stuff. And, we saw some pretty high scoring games yesterday in the first day of college basketball, and I kind of expect that trend to continue into today. So I do like this over at 147. I don't really like a side in either. That line's been going either way. I was going to do Baylor on the money line, but then I can't bet against Bruce Pearl in that defense. But then thinking about it again, I can't bet against Scott Drew and, just how experienced he is as a head coach. So I'm just going to take it over. I like this over at 147.5. I think that's a great play. But now we're going to go into a very contrarian play. And yes, I know you're thinking, who the hell is UNC Asheville? Well, we're taking them at +10.5 because they're facing Michigan. And Michigan, they're overrated this year. Me personally, as a fan of college basketball, this is my system. Fading Michigan all year. Because they're not that good. They're not that good. That line has moved. UNC Asheville, obviously, as well, a great program, too, out of the Big South. They just won that Big South title last year. They returned most of their key guys. They made the tournament last year. I think that they make this a very interesting game. I think Michigan is not going to be a big contender in the Big Ten this year. They're going to be more middle of the pack. I'm not saying they're going to be bad. I just don't think they're going to be good enough to be better than the team that just won their own conference by 11. So I'm taking UNC Asheville. That line has moved. I got it at 11.5. It moved down to 10.5. That line is moving down quickly. I get it at 10.5, and I probably only get it down to maybe 10. I just like this play for you, and I don't think they're going to be. If it's getting around single digits, then I'd stay away. But I like UNC Asheville today. I just think that this team, can go into Michigan. I mean, did we not just see James Madison yesterday? I mean, did we not see James Madison go into East Lansing and beat Tom Izzo and the number 4 team? Why can't UNC Asheville, a team that actually I think is better than James Madison right now in terms of how they play? I think they still have Drew Pember, that tall, the lengthy shooter for UNC Asheville. I mean, this is not a completely new team for Juwan Howard, but a new look. Obviously, one of the bigger names that they did miss out on that obviously that since he's obviously at your program now is Caleb Love. Obviously, he was going to Michigan earlier, but now obviously I think it was because he wasn't going into his program, if I'm not mistaken, or they wouldn't let him into his program at Michigan. So then he transferred out and went to Arizona. So that's a big loss for your program right there. I don't think Juwan Howard is really leading this program in the right direction. Obviously, this Michigan team has kind of been trending in the wrong direction ever since he kind of took the job. Obviously, they had that one good year where they were the number 1 seed, and after that, it's kind of been a downward spiral for Juwan Howard. We've seen him on the sideline, in terms of we've seen him get in fights as well with that Wisconsin coach. This is a simple play. We're fading Michigan all year in great matchups like this. I like UNC Asheville to cover tonight. Those are my 2 college basketball plays. Just simple, keeping it easy. I'll also be posting my Champions League parlay on Twitter. That'll be coming out soon. It's going to be 4 legs, something simple just for today. We'll also have one for tomorrow as well, since there's Champions League games today and tomorrow. But that's it for today. Just a little simple 2-piece. Auburn, Baylor, we want some points. That game's going to go over 147. But UNC Asheville, they're covering by double digits. They're going to be covering by 10.5. I think those are some 2 great locks. Ari, what are your best bets for this Tuesday afternoon in terms of the NBA, college basketball? What do you like on this slate?
Well, there's actually no NBA games on today, so I'm
There is no NBA games today.
So I'm just on 2 college plays. I'll start off with the play in the game that you already talked about. And for me, I'm on Auburn, and it mostly comes down to continuity. Baylor has 3 transfers that are coming in that are going to play legit minutes, and so, having that many new players is always going to be a bit of an adjustment in the first game. Obviously, they had some exhibition games, but it's obviously different, playing Auburn versus, where they played an exhibition game. So for me, it's mostly just comes down to Auburn having just kind of more returning pieces from last year's team. I also think that they're a little bit better defensively overall than Baylor as well. Obviously, it's a new season, so last year only means so much. But Auburn has a lot of its key contributors returning from last year's team, as well as an All-American freshman as well. So I'm going Auburn here in this one. I've seen the line move as well, and kind of flip in both favor. It's essentially a pick 'em right now at a 1-point spread right now. And then I'm going Iowa to cover the 20 points. They're a team that's drastically different at home versus on the road, and they're at home. They lost Chris Murray, but they still have a lot of other returning pieces as well. And I think they're just going to dominate the glass in this one. North Dakota doesn't return a lot of its big kind of rebounders from last year, so Iowa should have the size advantage by quite a bit. And Iowa's historically covered well at home and games where they're favored by this much, 18 to 20 points or so. The line went up. It was originally I saw it at, I think, 18 yesterday or maybe 19. Now it's up to 20. I think that they could win this game by 25 to 30 plus at home to open the season. Like you said, we saw a lot of big favorites cover pretty easily yesterday, and that happens quite a bit in these early games where, you have these, obviously highly touted schools against these smaller schools. Obviously, you can have some upsets and close games mixed in as well, but overall, more times than not, you're going to have the big teams cover. And I like Iowa at home to cover here, the 20 points.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there with Iowa. I feel like this team at home, as you mentioned, we talked about Iowa, the Hawkeyes last year in terms of how they play basketball, and they're a great team, but you mentioned their home and road splits, and they're just very shocking. On the road, they struggle to shoot the ball, and they're just not as honed well defensively. And at home, obviously, just a lot better team at home. Obviously, they're playing North Dakota, so it's one of those high spreads games. So I do like Iowa to cover this spread, even though obviously they did lose Chris Murray, so they don't have the Murray brothers, and I believe McCaffrey is finally graduated from that program. So, Fran McCaffrey, his son is finally not in that program anymore. So, it's going to be a new Iowa team, a new look Iowa team. I'm excited to see how it looks. And you mentioned North Dakota, they did lose a bunch of size. Iowa always kind of is known for their size. So I do like Iowa in this matchup with them. Like I said, for that Auburn game, I've been seeing that line go both ways. I did want to take Auburn on the spread at first. It was at +1.5. And I was like, I would love that for Auburn, but that line just shifted all the way to Auburn as the favorite, or almost a slight favorite now. And it's, almost like so much to where I just want to take an over, but I do like them as on the money line as well. You mentioned Baylor, getting a bunch of transfers as well this year, after losing some key guys, as I mentioned earlier. But, Auburn with their kind of key continuity kind of, being the fact that, they did bring a lot of returning guys back from the previous year. That's definitely a big get for this Auburn team. But, I in this kind of game, and also for people who don't know, this game also is a neutral site game. I believe this is in South Dakota, in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So, this is a real neutral site game because there's this is in South Dakota. So, there's no home court advantage or nothing like that. I just think this game is going to go over. I kind of like this game in this spot and to go over 147.5. But I do like the Auburn money line pick as well. If I had to lean one side right now, I definitely like the juice on the Auburn money line. I think that's a great line. But I think that's a 4-0 day. Simple college basketball plays. Going back to mine, I had Auburn Baylor to go over. Like I said, 147.5, and I have UNC Asheville to cover. I just don't think Michigan is going to be that talented this year, and a struggling year for them. And UNC Asheville, they return a lot of guys from last year. I think that's a great line. That line moved from 11.5 all the way down to 10.5 just recently. So I think that line is pretty indicative that UNC Asheville is going to be a team that's going to be keeping around Michigan all day. And then obviously Ari's best bets. He has Iowa easily handling the cover of 20 points against North Dakota. Obviously, Iowa at home, a better team, and obviously North Dakota, losing a lot of guys, whether it's the portal or just graduating and stuff like that. And then Auburn money line, he likes the Tigers in this spot today against the Baylor Bears. Obviously, very very defensive team in Auburn, and they bring a lot of key guys back. And then Baylor, even with all those highly touted transfers, it's still you still never really know how they're going to play in their first game in the as a Baylor Bear. So I definitely do like those two plays. I think that's a 4-0 card. Don't forget, you can find all of these plays on our Twitter. That'll be AKP Sports Talk down below. We will also be having our Champions League parlay posted as soon as this video ends, along with all our plays for today. But if that's going to do it, that's Ari. I'm Kriya. We will see you guys tomorrow for our best bets. Like I said, don't forget, check the Twitter for all of our plays, AKP Sports Talk. We will see you guys tomorrow for our full episode for another day of best bets. See you guys.